Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Welcome to the Ministerial Press Conference of the ITF 2021 Virtual Summit. It's very good to be with you today. My name is Michael Claude. I'm the Head of Communications of the International Transport Forum, and I welcome you to this press conference, the objective of which is to brief the public about the decisions by the Council of Ministers of Transport. The Council is the ITF's supreme decision-making body, and it meets once a year during the ITF Annual Summit. And so this ministerial is, if you like, the high point of that event. Ministers meet in closed session to allow for an open discussion, but what they agree is, of course, of relevance and interest to the public. And to hear about what has been agreed is why we are all here, I suppose. Ministers have just finished their meeting, and so the news doesn't come much fresher than what we're about to hear. The presidency of ITF this year is held by the Republic of Ireland, and the Minister Eamon Ryan, the Irish Minister for Environment, Climate, Communications and Transport, chaired the Council of Ministers. I'm delighted that he is with us to report on what ministers have discussed and decided. Also with us is ITF Secretary-General Young Tae Kim, who also has some news to share, I believe, and who will also give us a quick review of the 2021 Virtual Summit, which ends tomorrow. Following the statements from Minister Ryan and Secretary-General Kim, we will have time for questions, and I would ask you to please use the live Q&A function in the portal to submit your questions. And with that, I quickly hand over to Minister Ryan to take the floor. Minister.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone from here in Dublin. It's my pleasure to speak to you today on behalf of the Irish Presidency. To begin by welcoming the newest member of the ITF Colombia. We were delighted to welcome them and hope that they find their membership, like we have, a beneficial experience. I'm most encouraged that we are increasing ITF membership in South America, and I hope we will continue to increase ITF membership across previously unrepresented areas so it becomes a truly global organization. I'm pleased to announce that the Council of Ministers of Transport under our presidency have agreed a ministerial declaration today, which seeks to harmonise our response to how we restore connectivity and build resilient transport networks post-COVID, how we foster inclusive transport for all, take a lead to encourage environmentally sustainable transport, and improve governance and financing frameworks. The declaration emphasises the need to restore connectivity, as connected and resilient transport networks are essential to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19, but it also notes the need to embrace this opportunity to build back better. We must ensure that we deliver a sustainable recovery that puts us on the path to net zero emissions. The declaration also recognised that COVID-19 pandemic has a particular significant impact on the mobility of the segments of society that are most often underserved by transport services. So we must support and promote initiatives that foster equitable access for all individuals across urban, rural, geographically remote and low density areas. I'm pleased that the declaration commits ITF member countries to show ambition, leadership and continued investment in the transition to a greener and more efficient transport solutions. The promotion of innovation in the transport sector will be critical to reaching our climate goals. Improving governance and financing framework would also be key to enabling newer, greener business models to emerge, as well as supporting research and development, including pilot projects aimed at deploying innovative and sustainable solutions. If I can turn now to the item that came up under the 7th item on the agenda under other business, which relates to the incident that took place on Belarus on the 23rd of May. A number of countries made intervention, Lithuania, US, UK, Italy, and Portugal, in that order, all raising their concerns. And I, in turn, took off my hat, as it were, as presidency, just to represent the Irish government, where I intervened in the closing sections of that on behalf of our country, to note that we strongly condemn the coercive forced landing of a Ryanair aircraft by the Belarusian authorities on the 23rd of May, and the subsequent detention of Roman Prostovich and Sofia Sabiga. Ireland calls for the unconditional release of Mr. Prostovich and Ms. Sabiga. These unacceptable actions put in danger the lives of the passengers and crew as they travelled between European capitals. we called for a transparent and independent investigation by the International Civil Aviation Organization into the incidents. This afternoon, I will attend a special ICAO Council meeting along with other European colleagues to put this case. On Monday evening, EU leaders agreed on taking concrete steps to protect our citizens, including sanctions against those responsible for the incidents, advising airlines to avoid Belarusian airspace and starting the process to ban Belarusian airspace from EU airspace. The EU is now operationalizing those decisions, and Ireland welcomes the swift and unified response from the EU and international partners. The protection of passengers in civil aviation must be a key concern for all, and those responsible for this totally unacceptable act must be held accountable for their actions. Belarus responded in turn, and the meeting concluded with us welcoming Morocco taking over the presidency, where we hope to return in person in Leipzig in May next year for a meeting of the ITF. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Minister Ryan, for giving us this comprehensive overview over the discussions and decisions by ministers. And we will now hear from ITF Secretary-General Young Tae Kim. Before that, however, let me invite journalists again to submit questions into the live Q&A. The first are coming in, so if you want to be among those whose questions will be answered, now is the time to maybe start. And with that, I hand over to Secretary-General Young Tae Kim.
Thank you, Michael. Minister Ryan and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this press conference. The ministers of ITF's member countries have just met for the annual meeting of the ITF's Council of Ministers of Transport, our highest decision-making body. Minister Ryan has presented the declaration that has been agreed. I can only add that this is a most important document that deserves to be studied and disseminated. It reflects a consensus that the transport sector is at a crossroad and that action is required now in the few months left before countries meet in Glasgow for the COP26 climate negotiations to revise their decarbonization commitment under the Paris Agreement. I also join Minister Ryan in extending the warmest welcome to our new member country, Colombia. Bienvenido y con muchas ganas de trabajar con usted. Colombia is the 63rd member country of the ITF. More importantly, it's our 4th member country from Latin America. We have Mexico, Chile, and Argentina. Latin America is a region that is strategic priority for the ITF. We want to be more involved with the region and contribute to solving the continent's transport challenges together. And we also want to learn from a region that has much to contribute to the global dialogue for better transport, from innovations like bus rapid transit to the large-scale use of renewable energy to decarbonize transport. Colombia is a world leader, especially in electrifying public transport. The capital, Bogota, will have 1,500 electric buses on its streets by the middle of next year. Colombia has so much to contribute to an organization that exists to further the exchange of knowledge and experiences. Colombia also has an incomparably rich cultural heritage and is one of the world's most diverse nations. And Colombia has a unique strategic location between the two Americas and is also the only Latin American country with coastlines on both the Atlantic and the Pacific. All ITF member countries look forward to learning from Colombia and also supporting it in addressing its own transport policy challenges. I'm sure that Colombia will be a very active ITF member from day one. Colombia officially joined IRTAT, our permanent working group on road safety, last year, so they already have some experience with ITF. Minister Angela Maria Orozco especially has participated in the ITF summit in the past and has been very active in exchanges with me and ITF. I'm also delighted to announce today a further new member, not a new country, but a new company that is joining our corporate partnership board. The papers were just signed yesterday. The corporate partnership board is the ITF's platform for engaging with the private sector and enriching global transport policy discussion with a business perspective. Many influential ITF reports have been initiated and supported by the CPB, as we call it. The CPB helps us pinpoint the hot topics that the private sector deals with in the quickly evolving mobility landscape. With our new members, the CPB now has 29 companies. Many of them work in what is called new mobility and in fields related to transport such as energy. Today, I'm delighted to welcome the CPB, a pioneer in the micromobility sector, VOI. The VOI operates shared electric scooters in more than 50 cities all over Europe from their base in our member country, Sweden. From the outset, VOI has partnered with cities and local communities rather than flooding them with their vehicles as other operators have done. VOI has also been a carbon neutral company since January 2020 and has adopted the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as its guiding framework. I'm delighted that VOI will now bring its expertise in new urban mobility to the table as a member of the Corporate Partners Board. And let me provide you with a quick look back at the summit. And we have 1.5 days to go, but some conclusions are already possible today. The summit draws to a close with 3 records in terms of the numbers. I'll tell you, firstly, we have never had a higher number of summit attendees. As of yesterday, 1,735 participants were registered. I'm very proud of that number. You can imagine that there was some concern in the Secretariat about holding the summit as an online event. We will analyze how participation over the 2 summit weeks and the different formats. No doubt there will be lessons to learn. And I'm particularly proud that this is also true for the participation by ministers. For this is record number 2, a total of 52 ministers and vice ministers and 24 heads of international organizations took part in the 2021 summit. 2 years ago, we used to have more than 40 ministers and vice ministers. Can there be a more powerful indicator for this relevance of the ITF? Obviously, the ease of logging on to a computer as opposed to getting on a plane helped. We will listen very carefully to our ministers as to how they weigh the ease of access against the lack of face-to-face interaction with their peers. Finally, record number 3, representatives from 85 nations participated in the 2021 virtual summit. This is a fantastic news and encouraging sign for the global impact of the work of ITF. What we do here not only resonate with our 63 member countries now, it raises also interest far beyond. To those countries who came, although they are not members, I say thank you and come again and work with us. And finally, join the ITF. As I come to a close, I would like to acknowledge 2 partners without whom this summit would not have been as successful as it is. Our regional partner, Saxony, as always, and our summit sponsor, Exilion. We are grateful for their support and hope to see them again. My final word of thanks goes to Ireland and Minister Ryan personally, and he and his team have successfully led the ITF through the pandemic in the most professional and charming way imaginable. And the organization owes them immense gratitude. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary-General, and thank you and your team for the work they've done. Michael, I think we are open to questions for, I said our time is slightly constrained because of the open ministerial session, but I look forward to you moderating that.
Exactly. We're going right into questions now, and I have the first questions here on my screen, which I'll throw to you right away. They concern the Belarus incident. That seems to be high on everybody's mind. And the 2 questions that are actually around the same topic, which go to you, Minister, which is, do you think there should be an impartial probe to the grounding of the Ryanair flight? And if so, who should carry it out?
I don't think it should be partial. I think we need a full probe, a thorough investigation. Later this afternoon, there's been convened a special meeting of the Council of ICAO, and I expect to attend that. I understand my Polish ministerial colleagues and Lithuanian ministerial colleagues will also be attending, along with officials, I understand, from Belarus. I'll be attending because obviously this was an Irish airline, which is why we have a specific interest in the issue. My understanding is that this is the first potential. What we'll be looking for is an investigation under Article 55E of the Convention of the Council and of ICAO. And my understanding of this will be the first such investigation, that I would expect it to be within the end of June sort of period is when you'd expect such investigation to be turned around. I think it's vital that it is, that it's thorough, that it's independent, that it's comprehensive. For all concerned, it's in everyone's interest that we have that understanding of what exactly happened, which is a very serious incident from our perspective. The European, I speaking as from half the Irish government, but also as a member of the European Union, we've made very clear how we condemn this incident and call for the release of the 2 people who have been detained immediately.
Thank you very much. I'm looking for some more questions. Apparently, this is what is the concern. If you want to ask something, now is the time to do that. There is a question about the part of the previous question about the status of the cockpit voice recorder and whose possession of this data, but I think that is just not now known. So unless, Minister, you want to say something about that, as far as I know, that is not available.
Obviously, we're in regular contact with the airline, and all that information, all the recording, all the information they have clearly will be provided to an investigation. But I think that the actual details of it is to be addressed urgently within that ICAO process. And I have every confidence that that international organization will be well placed to answer those more detailed questions.
Thank you. Another question just coming in from Connor Humphreys. Any thoughts on reopening of European tourism and air transport in the coming months as the pandemic hopefully recedes? Maybe that is a question for Young Tae.
Yeah, we recently hear many good news from several countries in Europe, and because before going into the summertime, and a lot of countries are now easing a little bit of restrictions, but it's also linked to the vaccination rate, because people, if they cooperate, and we might have the better situation in summertime, but I think everything is on track, but we cannot really know what might come. We still have some uncertainty, but hopefully from ITF perspective, we really want to normalize the situation as soon as possible. And so under the Spanish leadership recently, restoring the air transportation connectivity as soon as possible, ITF is actively participating in that initiative.
I can comment on that, Michael, as well, just briefly. It's just the advantage of being in the ITF is it is truly global, as we increasingly see today. And our response to the COVID pandemic has to be global too. We have to see the rolling out of vaccinations right across the world. So travel across all our countries is provided and protected. We had a very good meeting yesterday where a number of ministers made this clear. It is really international cooperation, international standards, international safety can only come from collaboration through organizations like the ITF, and indeed through the World Health Organization and other bodies, where we need to make sure all our countries, all our peoples have access to safe travel now as we come out of this pandemic, which will require global vaccination response and global coordination in how we make travel safe in this difficult time.
Yeah. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Young Tae. And maybe just to add that what Young Tae was referring to is a protocol that is being worked out at the OECD with participation of the ITF under the leadership of Spain to enable air travel again. This is currently a project that's going on. A further question coming in, and I think we can maybe take one or two more. Any thoughts on carbon emissions from international shipping and air transport? How can decarbonization be coordinated on a global basis, as these two modes do not fall under the Paris Agreement?
Maybe I can reply to that question. In fact, we identified three difficult, hard to abate sectors during this summit period, and basically they are freight, freight sector and maritime sector and aviation sector. And a lot of the high-level decision makers, including ministers and leaders of international organizations, experts gathered here in Leipzig and in the cyberspace, and to talk about that issue. And recently, ITF launched a big project supported by European Commission, especially to deal with that question. So even though we have no single lesson right now, but we already started work on that question, and maybe at some point we might share more information on that.
Thank you very much.
As well, Michael, if I could come in on that briefly as well. I think there was also a very welcome invitation today from Rachel McLean, the Under Secretary of State in the UK Department of Transport, to all our ministers to attend the COP26 in Glasgow, where we all know the review of our nationally declared contributions to keeping global temperature increases below 1.5 degrees is going to be critical, and transport is going to be central in that. I think one of the most important lessons or developments at this conference, the virtual as it was still very significant. The outlook that was presented by ITF as to where we are on transport emissions. And the truth is, the harsh truth is that we are not on track to meeting the Paris climate goals on current, even with all the initiatives that are in train in a variety of different governments. The reality is, in transport, as in other areas, and transport may be the most difficult, challenging one to change. We need to make a leap into greater ambition, and it will have to be, and it will be, to a better transport system, where we switch an emphasis on mobility to accessibility, where we really measure success by having 15-minute cities where services are close to hand. Town centre first, clever village planning so that people are within easy walking, cycling distance of their schools and shops and workplace and so on. So I think the message coming out of this, the biggest, most important ITF message from this is from that outlook that we are going to need to do a lot more. And I think we will reconvene in Glasgow as transport ministers to see how we can play our part in that regard.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Ryan. You actually answered the last question about the outlook I was going to put to you. So that's very good, because we are at 10 minutes to 2 and you need to be at the open ministerial in 10 minutes time. So unfortunately, we have to close this press conference here now. I hope you found it interesting. Thank you for asking many interesting questions, and thank you to Minister Ryan and to Young Tae Kim for answering them. While you're still here, let me draw your attention to tomorrow, where we have lots of interesting events going on the last day of the summit. Among them, the award ceremony for the Young Researcher of the Year award, and a virtual bicycle tour with the Lord Mayor of Leipzig. With that, I say goodbye. I thank again the Minister and the Secretary-General. Hope you enjoyed this. If you have more questions, do send us an email. We will try to respond as best as we can. Thank you, and a very good day to all of you.